never thought I would be in this position, but here I am, sharing my story. My name is Jake, and I'm just an average guy living in a suburban neighborhood with my wife, Sarah. We had been married for 6 years. At first, everything was perfect. We were that couple everyone envied, the kind that finished each other's sentences and had plans for the future that included kids, a house, and a dog. The typical American dream, right? But then the cracks started to show, and I ignored them for far too long. It all began about 6 months ago when Sarah started acting strangely. I remember it vividly. She seemed more distant, like I was living with a stranger. The late nights at work became more frequent, as did her mysterious phone calls. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe she was just stressed from work. But as time went on, I noticed the signs, the subtle changes in her behavior, the way she dressed up just to go grocery shopping, the way she'd suddenly get defensive about her phone. One night I came home early from work, hoping to surprise her. Instead, I found her texting someone frantically, her face flushed with panic when she saw me. When I asked her who it was, she laughed it off, claiming it was just a friend from work. I wanted to believe her, but that friendly tone seemed forced, and the way she quickly locked her phone made my gut twist. Something was off, and deep down I knew it. A couple of weeks later, I decided to do a little digging. It felt wrong, but I had to know. I went through her phone while she was in the shower, and my heart sank when I saw texts from my brother-in-law, Mike. They were flirty, too flirty. I scrolled through the messages and to my horror discovered they were meeting up when she said she was working late or hanging out with friends. My heart raced and anger surged in my chest. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. That night when she came out of the shower, I confronted her. I asked her point blank about Mike. She played innocent at first, claiming I was being paranoid, that I was overreacting. But I laid out the evidence, the texts, the late nights, the changed behavior. Her face went pale and, for a moment, I thought she might confess. Instead, she became defensive, catching me off guard. "Jake, you're being ridiculous. He's just a friend. You're the one who's been acting distant," she snapped. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was turning this around on me. The lies were piling up like dirty laundry, and I was suffocating in them. I felt a mix of anger and despair. How could she lie to my face like this? I thought back to our vows, the promises we made to each other. It felt like a cruel joke. I was furious, yet strangely heartbroken, feeling the weight of betrayal crushing me. It was the kind of pain that seeps into your bones, leaving you hollow and lost. That night I barely slept. My mind raced through every memory, every laugh we shared, and every dream we built. I replayed our life together like a sick movie loop, trying to find where it all went wrong. I had trusted her completely, and she had shattered that trust in a matter of moments. As dawn broke, I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't let this slide. I had to confront Mike and put an end to this affair once and for all. But how? The thought of tearing apart family bonds made me hesitate. Still, the betrayal cut so deep that I couldn't just stand by. I needed revenge, and I needed to expose them both. And so began my plan, a plan that would ensure total destruction for both my wife and my brother-in-law. The next few days were a blur of anger and confusion. I was living in a state of disbelief, going through the motions of my daily life while my mind was consumed with visions of Sarah and Mike together. I was furious, and I felt completely betrayed. Each time I saw her, I had to remind myself to act normal, to play the part of the oblivious husband. But inside, I was plotting my revenge. I decided to gather more evidence before I confronted Mike. I wanted to make sure I had everything lined up perfectly. I couldn't expose them without solid proof that would leave no room for denial. So I began to follow Sarah subtly, keeping my distance. I would wait for her to leave for work or girls' night, and then tail her. It felt wrong, but I was on a mission. I had to see for myself what was happening. One Friday evening, she told me she was going out with friends, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a surge of excitement. I knew she would meet Mike. My gut told me that tonight was the night I would confirm my suspicions. I followed her discreetly to a local bar. When I arrived, the bar was buzzing with life, filled with laughter and music. I took a seat in a corner booth where I could observe without being seen. As I sipped my drink, I soon spotted her. There she was, laughing and flirting with Mike, her body language giving away a comfort that sent daggers through my heart. They were sitting closer than friends should, their faces lit by the glow of the bar lights. I felt my blood boil as I watched her toss her hair back and lean in, whispering something that made him laugh. I wanted to storm over there and confront them, but knew that I had to bide my time. I needed more proof. After what felt like an eternity, I finally saw them exchange a kiss, a quick peck but enough to confirm my worst fears. I felt sick, a twisting in my stomach that made it hard to breathe. The betrayal was no longer a suspicion, it was a harsh reality. I snapped a few photos from my phone, capturing the moment as evidence. I knew these images would be crucial when I finally confronted both of them. I slipped out of the bar, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. I had confirmed what I already knew, but seeing it firsthand was a different kind of pain. I drove home in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. My mind was racing with thoughts of how to handle this. I had to make a plan that would not only hurt them but also ensure they felt the consequences of their actions. The next day, I contacted a close friend of mine, Brian, who I knew would have my back. Over coffee, I laid out the entire story, the betrayal, the affair, the photos I had taken. Brian listened intently, his expression shifting from shock to anger as I shared the details. "You need to expose them, man," he said, his voice steady. "They can't just get away with this. It's time for some justice." I felt a strange sense of relief, knowing I wasn't alone in this. Brian helped me brainstorm ideas on how to execute the plan. I wanted to make sure that both Sarah and Mike faced the consequences of their actions, and I needed to do it in a way that would leave a lasting mark. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about making sure they knew that betrayal comes with a price. We decided that the best course of action would be to have an intervention of sorts. I would gather our family together, including Sarah's parents, and confront her about the affair, including Mike in the fallout. The thought of doing this sent a thrill of satisfaction through me, knowing that I would not only expose their lies but also dismantle the facade they had built around our family. I spent the next few days preparing myself, working out exactly what I would say. I drafted a message to send out to our family, explaining that I needed everyone to come over for an important matter. I made sure to keep the details vague enough to avoid suspicion, but direct enough for them to understand the urgency. As the day approached, I felt a mix of anxiety and excitement. I was about to expose the truth, and there was no turning back. I wanted them both to feel the weight of betrayal, to know that their actions had consequences far beyond just the two of them. I was ready for the fallout, ready to watch my life change in ways I could never have anticipated. I took a deep breath, preparing myself for the storm that was about to unfold. The day finally arrived, and the air was thick with tension as I waited for everyone to arrive. I had decided to host the gathering at our house, the one place where so many happy memories had been made, now turned into a battleground. I could feel my heart racing, not from nerves but from anticipation. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when the truth would come crashing down on Sarah and Mike. Family members started to trickle in, Sarah's parents, her sister Lily, and a few close relatives. I greeted them with forced smiles while internally preparing for what was about to unfold. Nobody had any idea, and I liked it that way. I could see the confusion on their faces as they noticed my unusual demeanor. I was usually the calm one, the one who held things together, but today was different. Once everyone had settled in, I gathered them in the living room. I felt a surge of adrenaline. I was about to expose the lies that had corrupted our lives. I cleared my throat and said, "Thank you all for coming. I have something important to share that involves Sarah and Mike." Gasps echoed in the room, confusion spreading like wildfire. I glanced around at the faces of my family, some looking concerned, others curious. "This isn't easy for me to say," I continued, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've discovered that Sarah has been having an affair with my brother-in-law, Mike." The room fell silent. I could almost feel the weight of the words hanging in the air, thick and heavy. Reactions ranged from disbelief to shock. Sarah's mother looked like she was about to faint, while her father's face twisted in anger. "What are you talking about?" Sarah finally exclaimed, her voice shaky. She looked around at the family in disbelief, clearly not expecting me to take this step. "You heard me," I said, my voice rising slightly. "I've seen the evidence and I have the photos." I pulled out my phone and displayed the images of them together, laughing, flirting, and the kiss. I could see the color drain from Sarah's face as she took in the reality that I had laid out before everyone. "Jake, you don't understand," she stammered, trying to salvage the situation. "It's not what it looks like, we were just being friendly." The excuses rolled off her tongue so easily, but I could see the cracks in her facade. "Friendly?" I echoed, disbelief clear in my voice. "You call that friendly?" I looked over at Mike, who had just walked in, completely oblivious to the chaos unfolding. I could see confusion painted on his face, but the moment he realized what was happening, it morphed into embarrassment. "Dude, what's going on?" he asked, trying to play innocent. "The jig is up, Mike," I said, my voice cold. "Everyone here knows about your little affair with my wife. You both thought you were so clever, sneaking around behind my back, but now it's all out in the open." Lily, Sarah's sister, looked horrified, glancing between Sarah and Mike. "Is this true?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "Of course not. This is just Jake trying to ruin everything," Sarah exclaimed, her voice rising in desperation. I could see the anger boiling within her. She was grasping at straws, and I felt a surge of satisfaction knowing I had put her in this position. "You can try to twist the narrative all you want, Sarah, but the truth is out," I said firmly. "You've betrayed me in the worst way possible." Mike shifted uncomfortably, and I could see the shame washing over him. "Look, man, it just happened," he muttered, clearly panicking. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you." "Your good intentions don't mean a damn thing now," I shot back. "You both thought this would stay hidden, that you could play with people's lives without facing the consequences." The tension in the room was palpable. Family members shifted uncomfortably, unsure of how to react. I could feel the disapproval radiating from Sarah's parents, their heads shaking in disbelief. The bond of family that had once felt so strong now felt fragile, shattered by betrayal. "I'm done with both of you," I declared, my voice steady. "You'll have to deal with the consequences of your actions. You think this is over. This is just the beginning." I could see fear in their eyes, and a sense of empowerment surged through me. I had taken back control of my life. As the confrontation unfolded, emotions flared and accusations flew. Family members began to voice their disappointment in Sarah and Mike, expressing their disbelief that they could betray me in such a profound way. I looked at Sarah, who was now in tears, her mask of defiance slipping. "Jake, please," she pleaded, desperation in her voice. "I never meant for it to go this far. I just got caught up in something I didn't know how to handle." "Caught up?" I echoed incredulously. "You didn't just get caught up. You made conscious choices to betray me. Don't try to play the victim." I could see the realization dawn on her family members. They were witnessing the fallout of her choices, and I was determined to make sure they understood the full extent of her betrayal. I wanted them to see her for who she truly was, stripped of the veil of innocence she had worn. The confrontation was wild, emotional, and raw. I was determined to ensure that both Sarah and Mike felt the ramifications of their actions, and I was ready to watch the aftermath unfold. The confrontation reached a boiling point, and I could feel tension crackling in the air. Sarah was sobbing now, her tears mixing with anger as she tried to defend herself. "You don't understand, Jake. I was lonely. You barely paid attention to me anymore." That statement struck a nerve. I felt anger surge within me at her attempt to shift the blame. "Lonely?" I shot back. "You think that gives you an excuse to cheat on me with my brother-in-law? You chose to betray me instead of having a conversation. You didn't try to work things out. You just jumped into bed with Mike." Her parents looked horrified, and I could see her father's fists clenching at his sides. "You don't know the whole story." He barked at me, clearly taking his daughter's side. "Sarah has always been loyal to this family." "Loyal?" I repeated, incredulous. "You call this loyalty? You raised a daughter who thinks it's okay to cheat and lie. She's not innocent in this." The room was charged with emotions as I leveled my gaze at Sarah, her face a mix of shock and shame. Mike stood awkwardly in the corner, his gaze flickering from me to Sarah, clearly unsure how to react. I "I never wanted this to happen," he stammered, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. "I thought it was just a fling." "A fling?" I laughed bitterly, the sound echoing off the walls of our once happy home. "You think this is just a fling? You both ruined everything for a cheap thrill." Every word I uttered felt like a dagger, and I could sense the growing tension in the room. Sarah's sister, Lily, piped up, her voice trembling. "How could you do this to Jake? You've always said he was the best husband." Her words stung, and I could see Sarah's face reddening with shame. "Because he's been neglecting me," Sarah retorted defensively, her voice rising again. "You all don't know what it's like. We've been through so much, and I felt like I was alone. You should have come to me." I yelled, frustration boiling over. "You could have talked to me. Instead, you decided to betray me in the worst possible way. Your actions have consequences, Sarah. Don't even try to play the victim here." The tension in the room was palpable. I could see her family struggling to process everything they were witnessing: the unraveling of their perfect daughter, the betrayal of their son-in-law. I had never wanted this to happen, but they needed to see the truth. After a moment of silence, Sarah's mother spoke up, her voice shaky. "We need to talk about this as a family. This isn't the time for accusations." "No, this is exactly the time for accusations." I shot back, my patience waning. "This isn't just a family issue, it's a betrayal that affects all of us. We can't just brush this under the rug." Sarah looked around the room, desperate for support, but I knew I had put her in a corner. She was trapped by her own lies, and for the first time I saw fear in her eyes. "I'll fix this," she said desperately, her voice breaking. "I'll end things with Mike, just give me a chance." "Too little, too late," I replied coldly. "You've already shown your true colors. There's no coming back from this. You've not only betrayed me but also shattered the trust of your family. How can we ever move past this?" As the confrontation simmered, I could see my family processing the chaos. It was a complex tapestry of emotion: shock, anger, betrayal. I felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness as I watched their reactions. I was finally standing up for myself, but at what cost? Mike finally spoke up, his voice filled with regret. "I'm sorry, Jake, I messed up. I didn't mean to hurt you." "No, you didn't mean to hurt me, but you did, and now you have to face it," I said firmly. "Both of you need to understand that your choices have consequences." At that moment, I felt a wave of clarity wash over me. I realized that I had to stand firm. I couldn't allow their apologies to sway me. The pain of betrayal was too fresh, too raw. I was done playing the victim. It was time for them to see me as a survivor, someone who wouldn't back down. As the confrontation continued, I saw cracks forming in Sarah's facade. She was losing support, and I could sense the desperation in her. I was no longer the weak husband she could manipulate. I had taken control of my narrative. The family gathered around, trying to offer comfort to Sarah, who was now in a full-blown meltdown. She was crying, begging for sympathy, but I stood firm. I wouldn't allow her tears to drown out the truth. I was done being the nice guy. "Sarah, this isn't just about feelings," I said when I finally found my voice again. "This is about trust, respect, and loyalty. You've shattered everything we built together. If you truly want to fix this, you need to understand that it's going to take more than just words." I looked around at my family, feeling a newfound sense of strength. I'm not going to let this define me. I'm going to rise from this stronger than ever. And as for you, Sarah, you need to realize that this was your choice, and now you'll have to live with the consequences. I felt the weight of my words settle in the room, and I knew I had made my point. I was ready to face whatever came next. As the confrontation simmered down, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Family members sat in stunned silence, absorbing the gravity of what had just transpired. I could see their shock, their disbelief, and even their disappointment aimed at Sarah and Mike. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when the truth unfurled in front of everyone, exposing the lies that had wrapped around us like a suffocating blanket. After a few tense moments, Sarah's mother finally spoke, her voice trembling. "We need to focus on the future now, on how we can move forward as a family." It was clear she was trying to hold the pieces together, but her words felt weak against the weight of betrayal hanging in the air. "Focus on the future," I echoed, incredulous. "What future, after what just happened?" "Sarah," shown us exactly what she thinks of family and loyalty. I could feel my anger resurfacing, bubbling just beneath the surface. She chose to betray the very foundation of our lives together. Jake, please, Sarah interjected, her voice choked with tears. I know I messed up. I can make it right. Just give me a chance. Give you a chance, I replied sharply. You're asking me to trust you again after everything. It doesn't work that way, Sarah. Trust is earned, and you've shattered it completely. The raw pain in my chest throbbed as I spoke, every word punctuated with the hurt I felt. Mike shifted uncomfortably, still standing in the corner, his face flushed. I never wanted this to happen. I thought it was just a fling. We didn't plan for it to go this far. It doesn't matter whether you planned it or not. I fired back. You both made conscious decisions to betray the people who loved you. What you thought was just a fling has become a devastating reality. The tension in the room rose again, and I could see Sarah's parents exchanging worried glances. They were grappling with the reality of their daughter's actions and their son-in-law's role in it all. Jake, let's take a step back for a moment, Lily said cautiously, trying to mediate the situation. We can't just throw everything away without thinking. Can't you two try and work this out? Work it out, I scoffed, incredulous. What part of this do you think can be worked out? She had sex with my brother-in-law. The trust is gone. Jake, please, Sarah cried, her voice thick with desperation. I love you, I never meant to hurt you, but I was done listening to her excuses. I turned to her parents, who seemed to be wrestling with their emotions. You need to understand that I can't keep pretending everything is fine. I can't go back to the way things were after this. I felt the walls closing in, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. Finally, in a moment of clarity, I decided it was time for me to lay out my next steps. I'm leaving for a while. I need space to think. I'll be staying with a friend until I figure out what comes next. Jake, you can't just leave, Sarah exclaimed, panic rising in her voice. We can fix this, I swear. No, Sarah, you've made your choices and now it's time for me to make mine. I need to think clearly away from all of this. I gestured around the room, the weight of betrayal still thick in the air. Tears streamed down Sarah's face, and for a moment I felt a pang of sympathy. But it was quickly overshadowed by the anger and hurt that still coursed through me. I had been the one left in the dark, the one betrayed, and now she was attempting to wield guilt as a weapon. As I prepared to leave, I turned to Mike. You should have known better, I said, my voice low and steady. You were family and you threw that away for a brief moment of pleasure. You'll have to live with that. His face was drawn tight, and I could see the shame etched in his features. The reality of my decision weighed heavily on me as I walked out the door. I felt a mix of sadness and relief wash over me. I knew I had taken a stand, a necessary step towards reclaiming my life after the devastation. I needed to find my own path away from the pain, to figure out who I was without Sarah's betrayal hanging over me. Once I reached my friend Mark's place, I sank into a chair, feeling the exhaustion of the day wash over me. The chaos of the confrontation replayed in my mind like a film on a loop. I had confronted my demons, and now I needed to find clarity amidst the chaos. Over the next few days, I focused on myself, allowing the emotions to settle. I spent hours thinking about the life I wanted, one free from betrayal and lies. I called up old friends, reconnected with hobbies I had set aside, and found comfort in those who truly cared about me. But as I moved forward, I also knew I couldn't ignore the aftermath of Sarah's betrayal. I had to confront the family dynamic that had shifted so dramatically. I had to decide if there was a part of me that could forgive, or if this was the defining moment that would lead to my ultimate freedom. And as I reflected on everything, I realized that the pain was part of my journey, a necessary step toward healing. I knew I had a long road ahead, but I was ready to face it head-on. The days turned into weeks as I settled into a new routine at Mark's place. Each day felt like a little victory. I was reclaiming my life piece by piece. I spent time reflecting on everything that had happened and what I truly wanted moving forward. The sting of betrayal still lingered, but I was learning to channel that pain into something constructive. I reached out to a therapist who helped me process my feelings. The sessions were eye-opening, providing clarity on what I needed to heal. I realized that while Sarah's actions had shattered my trust, they didn't have to dictate my future. I was finding strength in my vulnerability, learning to embrace the difficult emotions rather than run from them. One evening, about a month after the confrontation, I received a text from Sarah. It was a simple, "Can we talk?" I felt a swell of mixed emotions rise up, anger, sadness, but also a flicker of curiosity. I had been avoiding her calls and texts, but I knew this conversation was inevitable. After much deliberation, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop. As I walked in, I spotted her sitting at a corner table, her eyes downcast. She looked different, vulnerable and worn, a stark contrast to the confident demeanor I had known. "Hey," I said cautiously as I took a seat across from her. "Hey," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. There was an awkward silence as we both sat, grappling with the weight of our shared history. Finally, she broke the silence. "I wanted to apologize for everything. I know I messed up and I can't change that." I nodded, my heart heavy. "You had an affair, Sarah. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a choice you made time and time again." "I know," she said, her voice trembling. "And I wish I could take it back. I can't believe I hurt you like this. I've spent every day regretting it. I see now how much I took for granted." Her words hung in the air, and I could see the genuine remorse etched on her face. But I also knew that apologies didn't change the past. "I appreciate you saying that, but it doesn't erase what happened," I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I understand," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away or even at all, but I want you to know that I'm working on myself. I've started therapy too. I want to grow from this." I felt a pang of sympathy. "That's good to hear," I replied, "but I need time to think about what this all means for me. I can't just jump back into your life expecting everything to be the same. You broke my trust in a way that can't be easily repaired." "I know," she said, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I'm not asking for that. I just want you to know that I'm sorry and that I'm trying to be better." The conversation continued, a mix of vulnerability and honesty. We talked about our past, our dreams, and the life we had built together. It was painful to revisit those memories, but I felt a sense of closure beginning to form. I was no longer the man defined by betrayal. I was someone who had faced the truth and was determined to move forward. As we wrapped up our conversation, Sarah took a deep breath and looked me in the eyes. "No matter what happens, I want you to be happy. You deserve happiness, Jake." I nodded, feeling a mix of emotions swirl within me. "Thank you, Sarah. I hope you find happiness too, but I can't be part of your journey right now." Leaving the coffee shop, I felt lighter than I had in a long time. It was a bittersweet moment. I was finally ready to close that chapter of my life. The wound was still fresh, but I realized that I had the power to shape my own future. In the weeks that followed, I continued focusing on myself. I invested time in my hobbies, rekindled friendships, and even started dating again. I was cautious, of course, but it felt good to re-enter the world as a single man. I learned valuable lessons through this experience: the importance of self-worth, the necessity of communication in relationships, and the strength that comes from vulnerability. I realized that life goes on with or without the people we thought we couldn't live without. As time passed, I began to see the bright side of my situation. The pain of betrayal had transformed into a sense of empowerment. I was no longer the victim. I was a survivor, ready to embrace whatever came next. In reflecting on my journey, I wanted to share this with others who might find themselves in a similar situation. Life is unpredictable, and while betrayal can feel like the end, it can also be a catalyst for growth. Sometimes we must face the darkness to truly appreciate the light. Moving forward, I'm excited about the future. I'm eager to see where this new chapter leads, filled with endless possibilities, new beginnings, and perhaps love again. And as I look back at everything that transpired, I am grateful for the lessons learned and the strength I've found within myself. Life goes on, and so do I.